Hello everyone, welcome to another Classic Movie Monday, and today I am going to be looking into another Humphrey Bogart film, um, one that I was believed made in 1948, if I'm not mistaken, but takes place actually in the 1920s within Mexico, and that film is called, as you can see by the title and thumbnail, The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. This is actually a rather interesting film in not only its location, but also the way in which it deals with its subject matter. So basically, Dobbs, who's played by Humphrey Bogart, and Curtin, who's played by Tim Holt, are these two guys that are sort of down on their luck, and they ultimately decide that, hey, we should try to strike it rich and mine some gold. And they sort of talk this old prospector named Howard, played by Walter Huston, into it. And basically, where do they go mining for this gold? The Sierra Madre mountains. So within Mexico. So they go there to find the gold. And I find this interesting because, you'd think that this would probably be something that, because you always hear of the 49ers and the big gold rush that I guess existed within Mexico, or not within Mexico, excuse me, within San Francisco, at least California, West Coast area within the 1800s, but since this place takes place in 1920s Mexico, there's, I guess there was some kind of historical relevancy that you could probably attribute to this film as well, but the more famous kind of, I guess, gold rush was really within the 1800s, with the people coming over wanting to mine for the gold, called the 49ers. But the interesting thing about this film, and what it really does a good job of, is really setting up the plot and ultimately what the themes as well as conflicts are going to entail. Because basically, once these guys sort of start on their journey, it's sort of a kind of downward spiral that ends up happening, because you ultimately end up seeing that there's kind of all these different things that end up going into this kind of a journey that results in them not really trusting each other, paranoia, greed, so it kind of sets to sort of tear the group apart, so to speak. Dobbs in particular is the one that's sort of, I think, in large part generating the conflict, although the other characters you'll see sort of play within the conflicts as well. But this is really what I think sets the film apart from a lot of other films that have tried to sort of attempt this, is the fact that it does live up to what it ultimately ends up establishing, and really you do like to see where it ultimately ends up kind of going. It's very similar to, I guess you could say, No Country for Old Men, for example, where money's involved. The money kind of as to whether or not who's going to get the money and what's going to happen to the money, all of that has a lot of, I think, emotional attachment with a lot of people. And it's really nice to see how these characters sort of work off each other, and how the conflicts end up arising really because of what they're really searching for and what their ultimate goal is, which is to get gold and eventually have money. So overall, when you look at the characters and performances, it's all well done and well executed, and what you would expect from a film like this. And it also reflects onto its era fairly well. as far as filmmaking is concerned. Like, you do feel like this is a very old-timey film. And was definitely one of the standouts, I think, when you look at Humphrey Bogart's lineup of films. So when you look at Casablanca and the Maltese Falcon, this one is also up there as being one of his most critically acclaimed and well executed and more memorable films. And there's definitely reasons for this, and it's interesting because you want to know who ultimately uh, triumphs, who ultimately ends up failing, what kinds of conflicts end up happening between the people that go on this journey, who do they come across, all of that is really woven up together and comes to I think, overall satisfying and unexpected conclusion. So I think that's really what really is something that ultimately I think lacks in a lot of films nowadays, is this sense of trying to create something where, it could go in a variety of different directions. Usually a lot of films nowadays, they have a certain amount of predictability to them, but interestingly, this film, you really don't know ultimately where it's leading to, and even up to the ending, it builds up onto that concept of not trying to really kind of get you to thinking of where it's going. And I think these kinds of films wherever money's involved, it's usually kind of easy to sort of set up that kind of unpredictability. But obviously, this film did it really well, and I think it is definitely worthy of a recommendation if you're interested in these kinds of films. And if you really enjoy Humphrey Bogart's work, you'll for sure, I think, find some enjoyment out of this film in particular. But I think that's really ultimately all I can say about it without really giving too much away. However, if there are any questions, comments, concerns, I'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, week, month, and year, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.